Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Dear listener, Happy New Year to you, and I hope you were able to enjoy time with loved ones. I'm glad to be able to be with you again. I ran some bonus episodes between series as it seemed like such a difficult time for many people. Some of those were path workings, which you might find helpful at this time. But anyway, here we are, back to the business of sharing extraordinary experiences. By all accounts, many people have been noticing and reporting a great deal more activity in their homes over the last few months. These darker months often bring about a deeper spiritual connection as we turn inwards, but even so, the veil seems even thinner than usual. Get in touch if you've been noticing this too at scarletofthefae.com and join us on Patreon to hear more content and support the show. This episode share is a real standout experience and a fabulous way to start the year and Series 3. Like others who perceive otherworldly beings, our guest has had many experiences throughout her life, but two were particularly meaningful. The first involves extended communication with some kind of intelligence which took the form of blue light. The other event was encountering a group of fairies and what came to pass as a result. Our conversation is split into two parts, with the fairy experience described in the next episode. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I hope you do too. I'll see you at the end for a quick chat.
Time to renovate.
I will tell you about what I call the alien experience. I don't know if it was an alien experience, but it's the only word I've been able to think of that suits it. That's the only because it felt alien to me. So I call it that. Whether it was is debatable. But and it was this happened prior. Before the actual fairy experience, but they happened within about two years of each other. So I fit them in the same time period, so they seem to me to be the same experience but different, if that makes sense. But yes, the alien experience, I was actually in quite an old house I was living in at the time with a flatmate. And we were watching, it was a normal night, we were watching TV, we were watching a film. I cannot remember what the film was because the experience I had afterwards just blotted everything else out. But we'd begun to watch a film, and I got up to go to the bathroom and came out of the lounge and went to go up into the hallway, and went to go up my stairs. There was only 9, it's quite an old house, there was about 9 steps up to the landing, and at the top of the landing there was quite a huge expanse of wall, painted magnolia, so it was like a blank space really. So as I went up, I looked up, and on the wall ahead of me was this strange shape. I mean, that's the only thing I can call it. It was a shape, and it filled the entire expanse of the wall. And it kind of hovered. It hovered. It just sort of on the wall itself. Yeah. It was a strange colour. It was a blue. It was different shades of blue. So that one half of it was oval shaped. Sorry, I missed that bit. Right. It was a large oval shape, split down the middle. One half of the shape was a kind of a deep blue, and the other half was almost like a metallic blue. And that was it. It was just this blue shape, but it had a vibration about it. Now, it wasn't a noise, but I could feel it, and it was almost like a very deep thrum, if that's the only way I can describe it. It was quite deep within me, but I could sort of sense this vibration. Well, my head, I really didn't know what I was looking at. there was absolutely nothing I could, there was no reference point for me. So there was nothing I could compare it to. It wasn't like seeing a ghost or seeing a fairy, seeing something like that, we can relate to that. We know what that may be, but this was just off the radar. Yeah. I had never, it was not anything I could relate to. I had no reference point for it. And it was just there, just there. And so I just stood looking at it. And there was this really strange sort of sense that I could tell it had intelligence. Now, of course, all of this wasn't, I wasn't sort of logically thinking about all of this as I went.
No.
It was, this is, in what happened afterwards when I was processing the experience. I began to realize what I had experienced during the process of it. And this thing, this shape, this whatever it was, I could tell it had intelligence, and it was aware of me. It was as aware of me as I was of it. And it was just the strangest experience. And of course, I had to go. I was on my way to the bathroom, and I had to go. There's just no way around it. I've got to move towards it. So I began to move up the stairs towards this shape, and went into the bathroom. And I actually leaned against the door for a while with my head in my hands, just now, because just thinking, what the hell is that? What am I seeing? What is it? It was just extraordinary. Anyway, I came out of the bathroom and then came down. There was a few steps to go down, and past the wall that it was on. It had gone. It wasn't there. Okay. But I went up into my bedroom, and that was another 2 steps up. Opened my door, put the light on. And I had shutters at the time. I had white painted shutters over the window. And there it was again. It was on the shutters. Only this time it was smaller to fit the actual size of the shutters. Yeah, so it just stopped me in my tracks. So I just stood there. And this time I spoke to it in my head and basically said, so, what are you? What can I do for you? And of course, there was no answer. I didn't get an answer, but it was this curious sense of that we were sort of we were curious about each other. Yeah, that's how it felt. That I still had that feeling. I took that feeling away with me. It was almost a surprise to see me as I was to see it. So so basically that was it. We just stood looking at each other. And then eventually it faded. It just faded. So I went back downstairs to my friend who's in the lounge. By this time, the film had finished, and I suddenly went into this strange, sort of confused state. And I said, "How long was I up there?" Because I started to tell my friend about the experience and what had happened. And she said to me, "Why didn't you come and tell me about it at the time?" But I was so transfixed with it, it didn't even enter my mind to shout to her. No. So, but she said, "Well, you've been up there for over an hour." Well, that shocked me. That really shocked me, because as far as I was concerned, I'd only spent about 15 minutes tops.
Wow, so
throughout the whole experience. Yeah,
that's time. So you lost time.
Yes, and that was a real shock. That shocked me when she said that. And I just realized the film had finished. She'd sat through the whole thing, because she'd only just started when I went up there. So it was a really extraordinary, and I haven't never been able to figure out what this is about. What it was. No. And I did sort of loads of research at the time. This was before I was on the internet. It was before we were all computerized, basically, or just before. So there was just I went down to the library. I was talking to people about it. But what it felt to me, it felt alien, and that's the only way I can describe it. And of course, when we think about alien experiences, we immediately think of UFOs, or of seeing lights. We see it as something that happens up there in the sky. This wasn't, but at the same time, it still felt alien, and it's the only way. And now, of course, I can only use that word because I don't know what else to to call it, really. No reference point.
No, you've just got, I mean, the thing is, I suppose in some ways you could say, I mean, it does, to me, it sounds really alien as well, I have to say. You know, in this sense of it having intelligence, but at the same time, then you could compare it to, say, the kind of fairy orb experiences that people have as well. Like, for instance, there was one guest that came on fairly recently and talked about an encounter at the creek.
Yes.
You know, where she's breastfeeding and this pink orb comes along, and that kind of sense of intelligence.
Yes.
But it's so hard to say, isn't it? And that's where the lines between alien experiences, let's say, or UFO experiences and fairy experiences, it's just so blurred.
It is. It is.
You know, but I think on these things you have to trust your instinct, and I feel you just kind of know when it's something like a fairy energy. Just my own view, it feels very different to.
Yes.
Yeah,
it does. And that's, I mean, a few years down the line, maybe a year or two later, I had a fairy experience. And it is fair to say I've been having quite a few experiences most of my life, really, since about the age of 15. So I've had quite a fair few myriad experiences. They've all been quite, some have been similar, but they've all had their own unique feel to them, this, you know. So but the earlier experiences, I've always been able to relate it to something that we all know about, you know, things that, you know, out spirit, etc. Of course, but this was, I will say, this is the very first time in my entire life and out of the experiences I have had, that I really could not find anything you know, to hang it on. It was an energy. I mean, to me, it looked like a projection. This is what it looked like, because it wasn't solid. There was nothing solid about it. It looked like a projection, and it was on the wall. It wasn't impressed into the wall. It was sort of hovering. That's the only way. It's hard to find the words really to describe what happened, because, you know, it took. I was so sort of focused on what was happening, but at the same time, I was obviously in a different, you know, my mind was in a different state, altered state.
Yeah, of course.
To perceive it, but it was an energy. That's the only thing I can describe it as. But it looked like something projected. It was an energy. The blues, the shades of blue were very odd, because there were these differing shades of blue, and one was almost had that one side of it looked like it had a slight shimmer to it, almost like a metallic. The lighter, the blue. But it you know, it meant nothing to me. It didn't look like a symbol I'd seen before or anything I could relate to. But I certainly felt it, and I felt it on a very deep, you know, the only way I can sort of describe that was the vibration was so low pitched that you couldn't hear it with the human ear, but you felt it. Sensed, so low pitched. It was almost a thrum.
Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress, and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com. Do you know whereabouts in your body it resonated? I know it's a while back now, but
it was kind of deep in the the stomach area, I think, or in my being, really. I can't really, it was just down. It was a deep vibration. That's the only way I can, rather than a high vibration, I would say it had a depth to it.
Would you say, when you say your stomach area, would you say it was kind of like lower stomach or solar plexus area where your navel is?
Oh, God, it's really hard to say. It was, I mean, I'm saying the stomach area because I think it was very contained within me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it was just so deep, really. I can't really, it's hard to say. I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel afraid. I was curious. It just brought out this intent, this curiosity. And of course, my mind was doing flips, somersaults. When I had that little break and went into the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then because I had to pass it. It was kind of still, it was still there when I passed it, and then of course it was gone when I'd come out.
Did it change? Did anything about it changed as you got closer to it at all?
No, it stayed. It was quite a big expansive wall at the top of the stairs, and it filled the whole wall from the floor to the top.
Wow! So how tall? How long would it have been?
So. But then, of course, when I went into the bedroom and saw it on my shutters, it just filled the shutters. So it was only the side. It had gone half size for the shutters.
And how big was it when it was on the wall? Are we talking sort of meters?
If you think of a normal sized wall, it filled the whole wall, a lounge wall or something. But this was at the top of the stairs, and there was just this, wall that separated, and then there was these couple of steps that got to the bathroom and into a second bedroom, and then another few steps into my bedroom. And so it was in between those bedrooms, so it was quite a big wall.
And it's an old house. Was it an old Victorian house?
Yes.
No, so quite Georgian. High, quite old Georgian, quite nice.
Yeah, in fact, high where I live, it was. I won't mention where I live, but where it is, it's in one of the oldest parts of the city where I live.
Lovely.
And it's actually it was a registered building. So yes, it's one of the oldest houses apparently. And apparently it used to be an apothecary. I did my research into, and it was in somewhere around the 17th or 18th century. It was an apothecary, and next door it was part of a bigger. There was two houses that looked pretty much the same, and we shared the same entrance. Two separate houses, but it was the same design.
Yeah.
And we went through a shared entrance, and then both had our front doors.
Right.
But the house next door used to be an abattoir.
Oh my goodness!
Apparently, that little courtyard that came through the entrance was where they used to take the poor animals through to the back. Yeah, but and the apothecary was on the other side. So very, very strange setup altogether. Yeah.
I mean, with the, you even start to think about whether it was a spirit form of some sort, don't you? But I think, as I say, you've got to trust your instinct. Yeah. I think what else is interesting to me is that your friend didn't come upstairs, as much as you were being held there, if you like, if you want to kind of put it like that, as same as you were kind of being held in that space by whatever resonance was going on between you and this I don't know if you call it like an entity or a living oval. That what's interesting to me is that she didn't come upstairs because she is watching the film. I mean, it's days before you could have pressed pause and then go off to look for where your friend is, because we take it for granted now. I guess then if there was a film on telly, there was a film on telly and you watched the film, unless it was a VHS or something. So she, something. I mean, I'm just kind
kept
of
her there.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that something kept her downstairs as well. And
well, we did speak about this at the time. Actually,
okay.
Afterwards, I said it's funny that you, because she said, oh, why didn't you come and get me, but it didn't cross my mind to do that. I was so transfixed and so in the moment with what was happening. Really, she just wasn't in part of that. She didn't enter my head at all, and I didn't think to call her. This was just totally, something I was experiencing. But we did actually speak about that at the time, because I sort of, said, I'm really sorry, but I get the feeling that had I done that, it would have disappeared.
Yeah, definitely.
It would have interrupted it somehow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But did she ever talk about why she didn't come upstairs? Did she ever?
She just said she was just watching, she was watching the film. Well, that was the strange thing, because I've been gone so long.
This is it.
Her mind.
Yeah,
it was almost like we were both in this really strange.
Exactly. It's like you both stepped into some kind of.
Yeah. She just carried on watching the film. Didn't think. I at the time presumed I'd just gone upstairs and decided to stay there.
Yeah.
So it was just very odd. But yeah, this goes down as one of the strangest experiences of my entire life, of all the experiences I've had.
Yeah.
And that one forever.
It is.
In my head as being, wow, that was out of orbit for me.
Did you when you were standing at the bottom of the stairs and when you went into the bedroom and you found it there, and you stood there for some time, did you feel like there was some kind of conversation going on, and at that point did you feel it in your body anywhere?
There was a kind of unspoken communication. It wasn't through words. The only time I sort of used words was when I asked it, what are you? What is this? And what I was, polite. and, is there anything I can do for you?
What response did you get?
As I said, I didn't get. Well, I didn't really. I felt something, but it was more of just a sense of aware. It was an awareness. That's the only word I can use. We were aware of each other. We were in each other's awareness, and there was a sense of a backward and forward exchange of energy, if you like. The only way I can describe it. There were no words. It was unspoken communication, but it was a communication of a kind. And I did know it wasn't harmful. I felt safe. I didn't feel, and at any time did I feel threatened. The only time I felt unsure was when I actually broke the contact and went into the bathroom. And then in that moment, I suddenly started going, my God, what am I seeing? What am I seeing? What is this? Going over and over in my head. That was the only time I didn't feel unsafe. That was just a strange, my head really trying to get around it, what I was looking at. But there was not at any time did I feel threatened by it or unsafe. But yes, it was extraordinary. It was a really extraordinary experience.
And would you say it was 2D or 3D? Was there any kind of 3D sense to it? Or was it completely just 2D?
No, it looked 2D. I kind of get the feeling it probably could have been 3D, but I only saw it from where from looking straight at it in that sense. So, and it was on the wall. It didn't come away from the wall at any point. And it almost seemed to need that. This is why it felt like a projection of some kind. It was so strange because it was on the wall and it was on the shutters, not sort of in the middle of the room or hovering above something. It seemed to need that backdrop. That's right. how the way my mind was working through it later, that it's, I spoke to some people at the time who were sort of interested in UFOs, etc. But I still didn't feel. One person said to me, "Oh, I think you were being scanned." And I didn't even know what that could mean, being scanned, But it didn't feel like that. I just felt that, I don't know. It just felt that it was we encountered each other. I may be wrong. This whatever it was may have been deliberately put itself in my way. I don't know. But there was something about it that felt like it was accidental. almost,
Okay,
like there was
right,
an
yeah.
accidental crossing of paths. I don't know, but I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know that. I really, I have no
yeah.
no answers really for what could have happened on that sense. I can only, go by what I felt about what it was all about. But the time
That's
loss
it.
was the time loss was the biggest shock of all, really. It was more shocking than the experience,
Yeah.
because it really threw me
Mm,
that it had been over an hour, and I
mm,
was kind of thinking it was like 15 minutes the most.
I
And I
mean,
don't
people
know,
talk about this. Yeah, yeah.
when I look back, I was thinking, well, what was I doing in that hour? It didn't seem, it didn't have in that moment, from the time of looking at it, from the bottom of the stairs, going up the stairs, going to the bathroom, then going into the bedroom, surely that all didn't take an hour,
Mm,
you
mm.
know.
Did you ever think, did you ever feel like you could have gone somewhere else and come back again?
um I don't know, I've looked at that, I've thought about that. I have no sense of being anywhere but in that sort of moment with it.
Mm,
I don't have any other kind of memories. I don't remember having any dreams either. Not that night anyway.
mm.
I had dreams that followed quite a few years later, but not that night. I think I slept quite soundly that night, if I remember rightly. But I have no other sense of anything except being in that time slot
Yeah.
with it, and just having this heightened experience, and knowing that it had awareness, it had intelligence, um, and there was just this sense of curiosity that came from both me and it.
It's lovely. I totally understand that, because that's what I felt with my really
Yes.
vivid Green Man experience as well, was that we were so curious, checking each other out, and
Yes.
this really intense moment, which was pleasant. Yeah,
That's
and
exactly what it feels like, isn't it? That
yeah,
there's this checking each other out. There's this, oh,
yeah,
what's
yeah, that's
this?
right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I felt, it was, I mean, I felt uplifted by it, and I was excited by it. Obviously, this
Mm.
was a hugely exciting experience. But yes, there was, because this is the way our brains work, isn't it? Our minds, because I couldn't relate it to anything. My mind was having trouble sort of
Yeah.
getting my head around the experience. That was the only sort of difficulty in that sense I
This is
had.
it. It's like your mind muscles in and
Yeah,
your mind takes
once
control.
logic, yeah.
Yeah, and then
Once the
because your
facts.
mind gets in,
Yeah,
the fear starts, and the emotions come up. Whereas just that relating in some way, or just say,
yeah,
maybe the word is experiencing. I think you may have mentioned that
yes.
already. Just experiencing each other,
Mm,
recognizing each other, seeing each other. That is, seems to take place on a higher level of consciousness, doesn't it,
yes,
before all the earthly lower stuff like emotions and
yes.
intellect kicks in. But we are, when we feel that, when we experience at that level, it's just something else, isn't it?
It is. I mean, and it's the unexpected. I mean, all the experiences I've had have always come in from the unexpected level. When you go looking for these things, they never happen, as we know.
Yeah.
But we always sort of experience anything out of the ordinary, or an altered reality, when we're least expecting it, usually.
Yeah.
And that was an ordinary everyday night. Both.
Mm.
We'd not long finished eating. We settled down to watch a film. My mind was, couldn't be further away from anything of that nature.
Mm.
But it was sort of in a relaxed frame. Obviously, I think being in a relaxed frame of mind as well helps to open things up. But
Definitely, I think so.
but
And
yeah.
did how was life afterwards? Did anything shift for you at all in your
Um,
life?
Let me think. The thing is, I've been so used to, in a way, I went through a period in the 90s where I went through quite a lot of experiences, of altered realities, and
Hmm.
mainly more to do with spirit experiences, or what I think was spirit experiences, who knows, which I could relate to, because there's something still human about that, even though it's still got that connection to human life and earthly life. So, and I've been kind of I've been on this path for quite a long time, I think now. So with each time something happens, it kind of it's just more and more confirmation, I suppose. I didn't feel particularly, nothing changed on a huge on an outer level. I carried on going to work and doing whatever at the time. But it was something I keep a journal. I kept a journal for years, and I continuously wrote about it in my journal, trying to get my head around it, trying to understand it. But it was just, again, another affirmation that there is far more to this world, than just the physical world in that sense. So, I wouldn't say it was like a big spiritual experience in the sense that it was an overnight life changer in that sense. Because in many ways I was quite used to those experiences, although that one, as I said, was like nothing else, and nothing I've had since either. I have to say it was a definite one-off, compared to all the others. So no, I wouldn't say I had a sort of a life-changing spiritual experience because of it, but I would say it was it has enhanced things at that level for me, that it confirmed things, that there is more. There's a lot more to what we know.
So you didn't have any just things turn differently in your life? So for instance, in your job or your relationships, or just in that sense, rather than something being a sort of profound spiritual shift, did anything kind of shift you on the mundane level?
To be honest, I mean, it's such a long time ago now. I'm trying to think back into that. At the time I had a holistic centre. Had my own holistic centre.
Yeah.
And I was doing holistic therapies and healing. Reiki. I did Reiki healing. I still do. And there was quite a lot. I mean, there were always experiences happening around the centre and the people we knew at the time. I haven't got it now. This was sort of late 90s, early noughties. So it was. It just seemed to be a part of that whole time in that sense, rather than something that happened where I had a big life-changing experience because of it, or a spiritual conversion. It was just seemed to be an ongoing part of it all at the time. I can't really claim that it sort of changed. There was a big change because of it. It just seemed to. It was a continuation, I think, is the word I'd use.
Yeah.
In that sense, rather than a big change.
I do wonder if the fact that it used to be an apothecary, whether that, who was the person that lived there, and whether, what else were they getting up to? Were they performing rituals in that house? Were they, what were they involved in? Yeah.
It was a beautiful place, actually. I used to call it the doll's house, because it was actually only a small. So it's a Georgian house. Really narrow stairs. There was only 9 stairs that went up the stairs, and they were sort of like all bent from age.
Oh, amazing!
And it was beautiful, very tiny though. No, that's why I called it the doll's house.
Yeah.
It was. The finding out it was an apothecary was was interesting, but I don't know who. Might be worth researching it again. Actually,
definitely,
it's come up again. I don't know who owned it, but I mean, a lot of the chemists around that time, especially the 17th century, were into alchemy.
Exactly.
So really there could have been what was going on there.
Exactly. That's it. It's the start of the kind of our understanding of science, as it were, and also sort of move away from religion, to an alternative I guess,
Yeah.
an alternative way of seeing the world, and they were really playing with magic, because I mean magic and science were
Yes.
interlinked very much at the time in that way. Of course, that's very
course.
different now. But yeah, so was there any conjuring going on in that house? Oh, it's really
I actually
fascinating.
do some research. I'll let you know.
Yeah, do. I'd really love to know about that.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder who's living there now as well, and whether they've...
Well, my old landlord, I only rented the place.
Yeah.
And my old landlord, because he used to live in the basement part beneath.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, he lived in the shed, actually.
Right.
he had a kitchen part underneath, and his bedroom was in the shed. He'd done it all up really nicely.
Yeah, amazing.
But he's still there. He still owns it. He's still there. I haven't seen him for a while, but maybe it's worth calling on him again. He might know some of that. At the time, I didn't think to ask him. I just sort of found out. Actually found out from my neighbour. He'd been doing some research. That's how how we knew that it was an abattoir, which is really quite horrible.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that really up until that time. We didn't, at the time we were living there, we didn't find that out until a little bit afterwards. So that was uncomfortable. It wasn't a nice feeling. But
it's
but
like
other
death,
than that,
and then
yes,
kind of life
definitely.
and exploration of everything in between.
Yeah, but I didn't have too many other extra. I had one or two things there, but nothing. It wasn't old as it was, but I didn't. That was just the incredible one-off. I think.
Yeah.
I doubt I'll ever. Well, I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, very odd experience.
And just one last question on that as well. So when just thinking about the fact that they were kind of split in, the oval was split down the middle, and you had a deep blue on one side and a kind of metallic-y sort of blue on the other side. And what was separating them? Was it just a line of colour?
A line. Well, it was like, I've often drawn this actually to show it to people. It was oval. Okay, so the whole shape was oval. I always called it looked like a shield, and I always called it the shield-shaped thing because I didn't know what else to call it. But down the middle, it had two lines. It's funny because this whole thing impressed itself, in my vision. But it was like two lines, maybe about half an inch apart, just going straight down the middle, so that it sort of separated off the two sides. And I can't even remember now which side was the darker blue and which side was the lighter blue. But there were two contrasting blues. One was like a very dark indigo color,
wow,
and the other was like this metallic-y, lighter blue. And that was it. So it was just this blue, incredible shade of blue energy. And that was it.
And was it a perfect oval shape? Was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was perfect. Right. It was just this total oval, split down the middle, and the two different blues. And that was all it was to it. It wasn't like I was seeing some ancient symbol that that we could recognize or anything like that. There was absolutely nothing I could refer it to at all. It was strange.
Amazing. Thank you. So you mentioned that there were some things potentially leading up to it, and then some stuff that happened afterwards.
Yes. Well, the things that happened before happened in another house. So this is another old house, actually. They also happen in old houses. But before I moved to that place, I lived in another place. Really old. That was a 15th century cottage.
Oh, amazing.
It was beautiful.
So
which was sort of in a village on the edge of the city where I live, sort of out in the countryside. And I was having a lot of experiences there. That was in the 90s. I lived there in the 90s, and that's where I was having a lot of things happening. I was seeing. I meant to actually mention this, so thanks for reminding me. But there were. I had a few experiences of these triangular shapes. There were shapes again, and these were blue. These were blue as well. Yeah. And these were just These were rotating. Probably about 3 or 4 of them were rotating slowly, really slowly, up in near the ceiling. Again, that would come in at me every now and again. I'd be in bed maybe, or I'd just be sitting relaxing, and they'd just come in. It's almost like they'd come in and have a look.
Yeah, it sounds like they're visiting
and go off again. But no,
yeah.
And I got quite used to them. It happened quite frequently, and that someone else experienced that as well with me in that place.
Wow.
So that was good confirmation that I wasn't going batty at the time. But I feel they are linked with that one. There is something about it, the shade, the blue shade. These were, do you know those weird spinners that they sell? I've used that look like
yeah,
that's what they look.
Is it fidget spinners or something?
Yeah, something like that. I've seen them in the shops, but they weren't like pointed triangles. They had this kind of rounded edge, sort of round edge to them, but in a triangular shape. They were just hovering up in the, you know, near the ceiling. Again, similar kind of looked like a projection. And then they'd go, you know, I mean, there was just no rhyme or reason. But I don't think I had them at that place, but the next place I moved to. But I do think they're linked. There was a sense of, I didn't get that same sense of communication. They were just kind of there, but they were, I'm sure they were linked on some level.
What did the other person say when they saw it?
They were a little bit freaked.
I was going to say.
Really, I mean, I as I said, I was quite used to certain things happening. These were very different things for me to see. But they were a little bit freaked. They were excited, you know, expected me to know all the answers, and I didn't. I had no answers, but yeah, it was that was a shared experience. So that was good for me, actually, because I often wonder when we have those experiences, you know, is it just for us? Is it just me? Is it me projecting? Am I projecting this? You know, what is it? So when you actually have a shared experience on that level, it's always confirmation that, you know, there is something that's, you know, coming through. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
And was it the same kind of blue, did you say?
They were like the metallic blue of the metallic side of that shape. They were a lighter blue, yeah. They were strange. They were, again, just I not something I could actually put a name to at all. Yeah, but I felt they were linked. When that experience happened, the later experience, it always did. In my mind, I thought there's a link. They've got to be from the same source, you know, from the same. They're connected.
In fact, that makes me think of a question I wanted to ask you as well, is that with the other one, and maybe with this one as well, was there a sense of recognition at any level?
Yes, funny you should say that, really. There was, without being able to sort of say anything definite about it in that sense. So there was a bay, because as I said, there was a lot of unspoken feelings around it and thoughts, and just this, you know, whatever, an exchange. And yes, there was some kind of recognition of something on some level, although I couldn't put a name to it and I couldn't articulate it. But yes, that's
that's when I'm listening to this and how your relationship went with the oval. It feels to me like there was that some kind of sense of recognition there, and almost like a reunion, or a you know.
There was something about it. I mean, I wouldn't say it was totally conscious in me, but obviously when I processed it afterwards, although I couldn't get my head around what I was looking at, and it seemed alien to me because of where I am now, in this, you know, present stage of my existence, there was still something about it that was, well, yes, you know, what did I expect? In a way, it was going to happen. So I totally get what you're saying. I mean, they do say anyway, where we all came from the stars originally anyway, you know. That's right. Even, you know, on the science level. So I totally understand your experience of that, and how that would, you know, resonate with you. Definitely. I mean, I've had similar thoughts as well.
And the triangles that were coming through on the ceiling. So were they staying on the ceiling? Were they sort of were they appearing in the atmosphere near the ceiling?
They were in the atmosphere near the ceiling. This was now the actual shield shaped thing was kind of on the wall. Even though I knew it was sort of it wasn't coming out of the wall, it was on the wall in the sense. That's why it felt like a projection. These triangles were at different spaced out in different areas, but they were up near the ceiling, but one was sort of closer than another that was behind it, so they were more 3D, I think, in that sense. They were more they were definitely, they were rotating and just not fast, they're just quite slowly rotating, and I could feel the energy from them as well. They had a heavy energy about them. When I look back, I have journals filled full of all these experiences, and it's only because I kept those journals I think I can really remember the details of it now. But they had a heavier, they hung heavily in a way. It's almost like what I felt about them was that it took a lot for them to sort of to come into the atmosphere in a way, if that makes sense. That they had a heaviness that the later experience didn't. That felt lighter somehow.
If they were appearing, did their pattern of appearance, was there any kind of pattern? Did they come like every month? Did they come every week? Or was it just, a few times a year? Was there any sense of a pattern of when they might appear, or times of the night or anything?
Not really. I think they happened I lived in that place for 6 years, and they happened about 4 times.
Okay.
And the one time I think was the shared time. The rest, it was, they tended to come late at night. I'm a bit of a night bird anyway, and I used to spend a lot of time reading in bed at the time back then, before the days of the internet, and they would just I would always know when, because I'd get a shift in the atmosphere. I'd be reading or something, and then I'd feel this shift take place, and I'd look up and they'd be there. So I'd feel them kind of entering. So it was again, no, I never felt scared or threatened by them in any way. Just this again is, it was an odd experience altogether, but I did feel that they were, I felt they were related to me in some way, that they were, this was part of my experience. It was something to do with me. They were connected to me in some way. And I did feel that the person who had the experience with me at the time, it was almost like they were permitted to just, they were brought in on the experience.
You were really close to them.
So it was a very odd thing.
And did they appear at any particular point? Like, was there anything particular going on in your life at the time when they were appearing?
Nothing untowards, really. Again, there was quite there was a lot around that time. This was in the 90s, early to mid 90s. There was quite an upsurge at the time in sort of spirituality, and people getting into this, that, and the other. There'd been quite a rise in it, I think, at the time, whereas I think it had been quite suppressed for a while through the 80s, and in the 90s I think there was this quite an upsurge of spirituality came through. That was kind of going on at the time. There was a lot of people I knew at the time that were it was before I became a holistic therapist. That happened a little bit later. At the time, no, I wouldn't. There was nothing untowards as such, except the time that we were in collectively. There was this upsurge of, I was doing. I mean, I always have done. I mean, I've been having experiences since I was about 15, which I think was my earliest sort of memories of things beginning to happen. And so I've always had an interest and always been, open to to these experiences. I mean, they don't happen every day, you know, but when I look back over my life, there's been enough of them.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, there was nothing specific at the time. Again, it's just this continuation of affirmation, I think, you know, of all of it, all of that, whatever it's about, you know. So I did have following those experiences, though. I moved from the place where I saw the energy on the wall. I moved to another place after that, not so old. I had the triangles one more time in that place.
In
the place that came after.
Right. So the triangles turned up in the apothecary.
Just the one more time. That was the last time I ever saw them.
Yeah.
But after that, not long after that, I had quite a nasty, well, I don't know if it was nasty or not, but I had a dream one night. I think I might have mentioned this, but I dreamt that there were about six greys, alien greys. Now, I never really took much notice of. At the time, it was everywhere. Maybe I've tried to, you know, balance it out to see if I was just taking in information. This was a dream as well, but it was a very vivid dream. But I woke up in my bed to find six greys surrounding the bed. You know, and they're only little things with the eyes. You know, it was that classic alien with the old big almond-shaped eyes, the little guys. And to be honest, I'd not really taken much interest in it, to be honest. But there they were standing around the bed, just looking at me. And at that point I decided, I'm sorry, but I'm not going with you. And I actually, in the dream, I turned around, got on my knees and held onto my bed head and started to scream. But when I woke up, I was actually on my back, letting out this silent scream.
It's awful.
But it was so vivid, it was very brief. That was all that happened, just this waking up and seeing them. But gosh, that kept me. I didn't go back to sleep that night.
That is terrifying.
That frightened me. The rest didn't. But there was something about that one that didn't sit well.
No,
and that was the last of it. That was the last of any of those kind of what I feel were alien experiences.
Well, that's interesting that it's almost like, okay, even if the Greys experienced whatever it was, whether it was a dream or not a dream, you made a stand in it. Sounds like you said enough. No,
yes, that was it.
So I
wasn't gonna, because I've been having other dreams as well, and I just that was like the last of it. Obviously, because there was I've had quite a few different encounters, so it's too much to go into here. But I do feel that there was a series of those kinds of experiences that were all connected. The fairy experiences was something else that was different. Time to
I'm sure you'll agree that was a really fascinating encounter, and I'm very grateful to our guest for sharing this with us. As I said at the beginning, we split this discussion up into 2 parts, and we'll be hearing about the fairy encounter on the next episode. I'm aware of other encounters with blue light forms, and they're often felt to be extraterrestrial, for want of a better description. However, fairy beings also manifest as light forms. Will-o'-the-wisp or jack-o'-lantern are familiar names for mysterious lights, and orbs regularly feature as aspects of fairy manifestation. Another similarity here is the telepathic contact. Although no words were spoken, there was some kind of conversing taking place. The original blue lights were observed but didn't communicate in the same way, but the oval felt different to our guest. And then, of course, there's the lost or altered time, which is a well-known attribute or motif of fairy experiences. I would suggest that the behaviour of the friend is also really interesting. The fact that she didn't come to investigate when her friend was missing, even though they'd just sat down to watch a film together. It's almost as if she were held there by some unknown force. Of course, we cannot know what happened that evening, but something powerful and unforgettable took place for our guest, and for her somehow it felt familiar. I think many of us can resonate with that sense if we've had unusual experiences. And as you'll have heard from our previous guests, usually there's no fear involved when we are face to face with an unknown being or form. That suggests to me that there's something innate within us, that we know that there is more. We just know despite what we're told about this world. I do look forward to joining with you for part 2 of this conversation, and please, as always, let me know your own thoughts at scarletofthefae.com and at _remain_curious on Instagram and Twitter. If you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe, and consider sharing with a friend who might enjoy this too. And if the weird and extraordinary experiences like these are totally your thing, and you feel you'd like to join a like-minded community and discuss these topics at a deeper level, you can join the Curious Crew at Patreon, which is also a great way to support this project. I'm hoping to be able to spend more time on research this year. I'm in the process of writing a book of collected experiences. A big hello to Carol and Jessica, who joined us recently as Weird Folk, and thanks to all the crew, who are just a really great group of people that I'm enjoying sharing ideas with. Our 2 ritual workshops are coming up on the 8th and 15th of January, so do join soon if you'd like to take part in those, and there'll be more events coming up in future too. Lastly, thank you very much for listening to the end, and I feel hopeful about this coming year. It feels like we're learning more about ourselves, and as a result also maybe how this world can function better. I like to imagine that there are forces out there who are standing with us, helping us move into a new period of spiritual enlightenment. The external world is coping with this change in its own way, but I feel the best thing we can do is connect to our deep selves and join together at the heart level, doing whatever makes you feel good at this time. We're part of something bigger, and as these mysteries are revealed, it always helps to remain curious.